So I'm very excited to be here today and help share some knowledge and advice with this great panel. We'll start with the introductions. We'll let Jessica start and introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Jessica Matthews. I am right now staff writer for the Office of the President at the Wright Center. Woo! I have some here from some amazing women here from the Wright Center. Before that, I was 30 years a journalist, mostly an investigative journalist. The last 24 I spent at the Scranton Times-Tribune. In my last role, I was the Metro editor there in charge of all the local news coverage and a team of reporters.
Thank you. And Tracy?
Good morning. My name is Tracy Lynn Pagan. I am the general manager of the Swiftwater. It's the new luxury boutique hotel down in Swiftwater behind Asaki. I'm a girl mom. My youngest daughter is here right now. So just trying to show them what it is to be an up-and-comer in the industry and be able to balance work and life and all the fun stuff. But I've been in hospitality now for about 20 years. Customer service for a little bit longer than that. I did banking and now fell in love with hospitality and just making memories for guests. So,
All right. Thank you. And Karen?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Kaminsky. I am owner and creator of Allure Salon Group. Allure Salon Group is a business that helps beauty professionals open their own business. Their own salon business. I started as a sales rep in the beauty industry, and believe it or not, we all wear makeup. Very few men, nowadays, wear makeup, but it was a very male-dominated industry. And I segued out of the sales position that I was in and started helping beauty pros because I was already doing that in my day job. Literally setting up their spaces now and giving them like turnkey salons so that they could literally open their business. And from that, it turned into a consulting firm, a national and international consulting firm, where now I help people across the country and Canada set up their own private facilities and create better tenants and better business owners in the beauty industry.
All right. Thank you very much, Karen. So we'll get right into it with our first question. What have some of the biggest challenges you faced in a woman-dominated field, and how did you navigate them? So, Jessica, want to start?
Sure. Today I'm going to talk mostly about my role at the newspaper because I'm very fortunate at the Wright Center. We have an amazing leader who's a female, Dr. Linda Thomas-Hemack. So what I'm going to talk about is the newspaper, which is predominantly male-driven, dominated. So for me, when I first came to the paper back in 1999, women were called skirts. And for many years, that type of culture existed. I would go cover things in the community, and it was not uncommon for men to call you honey and dear, hug you. Men, I didn't know, hug you, kiss you on the cheek. That just was the culture in Northeast Pennsylvania, and it still is to a degree. So that was tough to deal with. And, the way I overcame that was I just kind of stayed on my course. I was a journalist. I wanted to cover the news. I wanted to rise in the paper, and I just kept my focus on that. And I showed that I had skills. In hindsight, what I wish I had done to the younger me back then was to stop it in its track and just say, hey, my name is Jessica. My name is not sweetheart. My name is not honey. Please don't hug me. I don't, that's reserved for family. But I didn't do any of those things. I didn't find my voice. Today, I absolutely would do that. There are several instances. One of the most egregious, in my opinion, at the newspaper is the Friendly Sons. Does everyone know what the Friendly Sons is? No. Okay, the Friendly Sons is a group that are Irish descent. It is male only. And every year they have a St. Patrick's Day dinner that is for men only, and women are not invited. And every year the newspaper would have to cover this event, and we would have to send a male reporter. And to make matters a little bit worse, our publishers were officers in the Friendly Sons. So when I became Metro editor, which was back in 2010, my goal was to put a stop to this. I wanted to send a female reporter, and every year I would try to send a female reporter, and every year I would be told no. Then COVID hit, and the Friendly Sons, they didn't have a dinner one year, then they went virtual another, and then it became 2022. And I said, I am sending a female reporter. Here's why. This is who I have working this shift, and we need to stop this. And everyone agreed, and we were sending a female reporter.
Good.
2 hours before the event, I was pulled into an office and told, we need to send a male reporter. I was astounded. I said, I am not going out there and telling a female reporter that she cannot go cover an event solely because she is female. I said, you're going to do that, you're going to go tell her. And the editor did. This is an executive editor. He did. I begged, I pleaded, I tried to reason. That was just the decisions. We had to spend overtime to send a male reporter to go cover this.
Wow.
The irony was TV News had a female reporter there. So the next year, finally, they agreed a female reporter could go. So the first time, 2023, 2 years ago, astounding, right? A female reporter was able to cover this event.
Wow.
So it still exists, and it's something that it's a systemic problem that needs to be changed. But those are some of the major things that I faced as a reporter and editor.
Very good. And Tracy, would you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that for me, in a male-dominated industry, especially hospitality, you're expected to work nights, weekends, holidays. So it's very easy in the old school nuclear home for the male to be able to do that. So when you're female and coming into that, they kind of look at you, do you have kids? Are you married? And like each thing that they find out about you, you can see it changing in their faces. Like, I'm not going to be able to depend on you. I'm not going to be able to handle, you're not going to be able to handle this. You're emotional. So going through that, but the same that Jessica did where I just stayed the course. I proved by my actions that I can handle it. I proved by my actions that I'll address concerns. I'll make you money. I'll do all the things that you need from the person that you're wanting in that position and still be able to fulfill what I need to at home and in my other, side of life. So that's pretty much how I've done it.
Okay, and Karen?
So in the beauty industry, like I said, it's a male-dominated industry, whether you're a sales rep, the top CEOs of, I was with Cosmoprof for over 11 years, they were all women or male-dominated industries. So what I did was I learned from them. I learned what they did, how they acted, and then I transformed it into Allure Salon Group. And in that field, I had to do the construction part. And what I noticed was with these contractors that they created chaos and confusion to kind of like validate what they were doing. And then when you kind of peeled them back, because us as women, we have that organization and multitasking, like we could do it. I noticed they couldn't. So what I would do is I would like watch what they did, and I knew I could do it better. And I watched and learned, and I took over their positions. And I was a top rep in Cosmoprof. I mean, imagine $800, close to $900,000 in hair color a year. And I was up with the top people. And now with our company, I literally watch all the construction that goes on. I learned how to read the blueprints. I learned how to identify properties, what are going to be good and bad. And now when I walk in, they don't judge me. A couple of them do. Because I walk in like this, I don't change my appearance for them. If I do walk in with sweatpants and a ponytail, they know like I'm mad and or I'm there to clean. But when I walk in like this, they know that I'm there for business and they know that I know what I'm talking about. So unfortunately, you still have to prove yourself in this male-dominated, but once you do and they know that you know what you're talking about, it kind of levels the playing field.
All right. And I think this all kind of is a good lead into another question about mentors. So have you had any mentors or allies that have helped empower you in your career?
Yes, there's one that sticks out to me the most. My general manager from the last property that I was at, from the Lodge at Woodlock, that was Rob Baldessari. he really took me under his wing. He was telling me, like, this is how Woodlock wants you to do it, and then this is how the real world is going to ask you to do it. So he really was helping me through, navigating not just the Poconos and the little intricacies within there, but what it would be like if I was out in, Florida or somewhere else, what would be to be expected of the position. But he was the first person to really do that. The rest of the managers and things I worked for were very threatened by my ambition, just my want to know more, want to learn, and I'm not trying to step on toes, I just want to learn more, I just want to do more. So he was the first one to really sit back and say, I want to pass the baton to you, so I want to teach you everything that I can. And I take that philosophy into now how I coach and mentor those within my organization so that I can help them grow into the same roles and opportunities.
Okay, does anyone else have anything they'd share?
Yes, I too. We had a change in our top leadership, and a man named Larry Beaupre, who passed away, was an incredible mentor, and he is really the reason why the culture in my newsroom changed. And women were no longer called skirts. The Friendly Sons was still the problem, but in general, he was a strong leader, he was fair, and it really shows you that it has to start at the top. That is how it changes. It starts from the top down. And, he wasn't just words, he was action, and because of that, the culture changed.
And Karen?
And for me, I zoned in, I started with Cosmoprof back in 2011, and I zoned in on the top rep in the country because Cosmoprof was a national company and it was in Canada. So I zoned in on the top rep, and his name is Alex Catalunas. And I befriended him, he took me under his wing, and he would show me how to do the deals. And he was in the boys club. Like, he would have the president and the CFO and everybody from Cosmoprof go to his house. And I used to say, oh, I'm sorry, my invitation must have got lost in the mail. I'm like, where's my invite? And he would laugh. But I was probably $1 million under him, but it was those little coffee clutches. He lived in Chicago, so like when he was heading into the city and I was heading out to New Jersey or wherever, my day took me, we would go over, what the specials were, what the deals were, what the, what hair colors were coming in, what were some of the other stuff. And I learned from the best. And again, by learning from the best and then you're proving yourself with what your actions are, was a game changer in my career. When it came to the construction, though, that's a little bit different. I mean, don't get me wrong, I could go in and clean and get everything done. But when you call them out on some of their, errors, contractors don't like that. But, when you're on a time schedule and money counts and it's your money that they're spending, you tend to overlook that and just say, no, get the job done.
Very good. So there's a little bit of a common theme from all three of you with male mentors. I personally had a male mentor at a couple different times throughout my career. What can we do to be more impactful and inclusive and make female mentorships more of a thing in these male-dominated industries?
I think it's important that, mentorship programs, they can't just be driven by HR, that they're like these feel-good programs. They really need to be at all levels of careers, not just entry level. And a lot of companies, that's really where you see a lot of them at entry level. But they need to be for senior level, they need to be mid-level, and they really need to be accountable. It needs to be a very concerted effort with measurable accountability. And I think, once you put those things in place, you get that relationship where it's beneficial to both parties, which is what a mentorship really is. It isn't a one-way thing, it's both parties. But those levels are really important in making sure that there's measurable accountability, where you're, systematically addressing bias and, when it happens, you do something about it and you do it publicly.
Yeah. And I know this is very dear to Tracy's heart, so.
It is. I love mentorship programs. I love mentoring people, coaching people, helping through the industry. I think for me, the biggest thing is it takes a village, right? We say that all the time, but it's so true. we're not just individuals that can do it all. We need each other's support and help and all of this. My coworkers, one of them in the room today, sees the amount of time I spend away from my youngest daughter. So when it comes down to who's going to take up where I leave off when I start to grow, when I start to move, it needs to be somebody that understands the sacrifices that I've made, that sees what we've done and where we've come. Pulling somebody from the outside and putting them into the position, they can tear down the whole infrastructure you just spent years away from your kids building. So I really want to work with the youth of tomorrow, the professionals of tomorrow, to really get them to the level where I can just pass the baton and everything kind of picks up where I left off and improves from there. Based on their leadership and everything else. So I'm very big on mentorship and helping people grow and helping people learn more. The more you know, the more valuable you are, not only to your organization, but to your family and your friends. So I'm big on mentorship.
And Karen, I think it's a pillar of what you do. So.
Absolutely. So again, with the Allure Salon Group, I didn't mention this. We have 5 locations in Pennsylvania. And when I started my company back in 2016, it was the first private salon suite in the state of Pennsylvania. And as a sales rep, I knew that they had a hard time setting up they didn't know how to set up a salon business. And that's where, I thought, okay, we'll give them the room, we'll give them the styling chairs, the wet bars, the shampoo bowls, get them all set up. We'll show them how to open up their business in PA. We'll show them how to get their salon license, inspection. But then what we realized is as we started to grow, and again, with 5 locations, Wilkes-Barre, the shops at Montage, Trexlertown, Lansdale is our newest location, and then East Norton is right outside of King of Prussia. What I learned was these individuals, while they were so creative in what they did as hairstylists and, artists and nail techs, they did not have business acumen. So we took it a step further in our business plan and our business overall, and we actually help beauty pros. We show them how to run a business, how to open a business, how to manage a business, and how to maintain the business. And that has been a game changer for this industry. And now even with the consulting business, we take those same business standards that we've created at Allure Salon Group, and now we're implementing them in the other clients that we use throughout the US. So we're making better business people out of beauty pros.
Very nice. What advice would you give to a young woman entering a male-dominated profession today?
Okay, first of all, be true to yourself. Don't do what I did and sit back and not say something when it happens and you're called sweetheart or honey or dear or whatever. Use your voice. Know your self-worth. I mean, one of the biggest problems in male-dominated fields continues to be the wage gap. Know your value. Know what you've invested in yourself, and don't shortchange yourself. Just don't be afraid to assert yourself. I was looking at the questions that were submitted, and this kind of goes in line with that, but someone submitted a question about how do you be assertive and not kind of be seen as bossy? And the way to do that is when you are in a leadership role, in addition to knowing your voice, you also have to listen and you have to have open communication. When I was Metro Editor, there were assignments that nobody wanted to do, and I didn't want to give them. They were horrible, but they had to be done. And be honest with people about it. I always had this kind of open communication policy where I would say, look, I'm going to listen to what your objectives are and know that you can come and talk to me about it. But the bottom line is it's ultimately my decision on what we cover, who I send, what we do. And when you kind of set that line, you're assertive, but you're not really bossy, and you're still kind of fostering this open communication. So I would suggest you be open-minded, open-hearted, open-eared, but also not afraid, especially when you're in a leadership role and in decision-making. It is your decision. That's not bossy. That's your role. So you can be assertive and not be bossy.
Absolutely. Tracy? Oh, jeez. Or we could go to Karen?
No, I'm ready.
Okay.
Be assertive. You're going to be called the B word you just have to do it. It's unfortunate that that is what we're viewed as when we do assert ourselves or do hold the hard line, but it has to be done. We have to do that in order to run successful businesses, in order to run successful households, everything. I have to hold the hard line with my kids. I have to hold the hard line with my husband. You have to hold it, but so you just have to make sure, staying true to yourself, stay humble. You don't know what you don't know, so be willing to admit, take advice from somebody younger than you, somebody that's in a different profession than you. I learn a ton from my children, and a lot of people think they're too young. You can't possibly learn anything from someone that's just now in 7th grade. Yes, I can, and I do every day. So keeping that open and understanding that we can all pull something from each other, and not being afraid to ask for help, that's huge. As a female in the industry, you don't want to look like you're weak or anything like that, but we just need to be able to be true to ourselves, stay the course, and be able to speak up and say when things aren't right, when you're not comfortable, when you need to have a better balance, whatever it is. I can tell you personally, I have not asked for an increase that I was so deserving of because I called out sick one day right after I decided I'm going to go talk to them and get that raise, and then I got sick, called off, and now I feel guilty. I can't go ask for the raise because now I look like I'm not dependable. I'm not able to do the position 100%. Mind you, for the last 365 days, I've done everything so that kind of stuff, we have to block out that noise and really stay the course. So, sorry, that was long-winded.
No, that's fine. So I have 3 pieces of advice. 1, stay persistent. Stay persistent, stay the course. The other one is everything is figure-outable. There is a great book by Marie Forleo. I absolutely love it. You could figure out everything. It might not come to you, and then what I've learned too is a lot of the things that have happened in my career, they were meant to happen. Like now I could see in hindsight, and never let them see you sweat. If they see you sweat, it's a sign of weakness, and unfortunately, you have to be strong, hold your ground, but persistence, never let them see you sweat, and everything is figure-outable. You could figure out any task. If I could learn how to read blueprints after selling hair color for 11, 15 years, anybody could do it. So figure it out.
Can I add something? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Imposter syndrome is real.
It is.
Stop. Because you do have the goods, you do have the ability. We're all guilty of it. I don't think there's one person in this room that didn't have it at one point or another. So, but you really need to let that not be what defines you or drives any decisions that you make. So just wanted to add that.
Absolutely, and I actually may add a little to that. I mean, we have to remember being a leader and being a boss are not always the same role. And to be a leader, you are a lot of times asking questions and listening to the answers. You're not expected to know everything. I certainly didn't know how to run an extrusion machine. I still don't, and make plastic. But you go and you have those conversations, and then that's how, when you're listening to people, you start to earn their respect as well, because they feel heard. Male or female, that makes a big difference.
I also want to add one thing too. I think it's important as women in leadership roles that we empower each other. And it is crucial that we stop being catty, that we stop looking at each other as competitors. Every time one of us advances, we are opening the door for another woman. It is not limited seats at the table. We need to help each other. And you also should surround yourself with a strong female network. That is going to be your sounding board. That's going to be your support. It's crucial.
That's awesome, and it actually goes right into our next question. How can we uplift each other without feeling like we're competing for potentially limited spots in a role at our companies? So we'll maybe start with Karen.
Come back to me on that one.
No problem. Tracy?
I think it goes back to the mentorship. I think that we need to not be threatened and to understand that the position that you're in today, you're going to grow into your next position. That's not your end stop. And that has to be out of your mind first and foremost. And then from there, you can look at how to help people grow and how to help people learn more. I always say step on toes. You know, don't go purposely out to upset somebody or anything, but insert yourself into whatever you can and learn about it. I've loved the surrounding yourself with a strong female network, especially in different industries and different parts of the industry, because I could learn so much more that I could take into the hospitality industry or whatever industry I end up retiring into. I think that there's so much value in what every person has. I have been a victim of somebody feeling like they were competing with me and all of that tons of times throughout my career. And I think that in turn, because I was bullied, because I went through that, I'm a little more compassionate and understanding. I don't feel threatened by another strong woman. I actually love it. I want more strong women in the workforce. I want to help you grow. I want to learn from you. I'm not confrontational. I hate confrontation with a passion. But every day I have to address concerns or I have to do things. I have to learn how to be that. So I can go to somebody like Karen, who's had tons of confrontation in construction, and be able to learn from her and be able to apply that into what I do every day.
Very good.
I think we also need to be really honest with ourselves and be introspective. Why are we treating other women like that? Are we jealous? Are we whatever the reason is, you need to be honest with yourself. You're not going to stop doing that behavior until you are. The other thing is, as a leader in a newsroom, what I would always do is every single time there was a victory, and it didn't matter how small it was, like sometimes it just was, for weeks you try to get a source, and then, finally, the person went knocking on the door and got the source. You celebrate those moments publicly, especially for women. You don't chastise, you don't offer constructive criticism publicly, you pull people aside and do that. And I think, when you start doing those things, it also empowers women. And it also, kind of prevents that cattiness and
Right.
But we need to uplift each other. It's just not we're not helping the good when we do this. We're not. We're showing other men that, hey, look how she's treating another woman. Why should I treat another woman as an equal? So we need to stop doing that.
And be who you wanted when you were coming up in your career. The support you needed that you lacked and all of that, be that for somebody else. Fill that gap.
And the reason why I paused was I see these people, like, you have to find your group. And the higher you go, you grow out of your groups. And if you don't have a support group, like, there's a joke that goes around that, your circle of friends, and I always say, I'm a dot. Like, I have my one girlfriend who's not in the business industry. But you grow out, and as you become a leader, as you go up in your career, like in supervised positions and everything else, those people who aren't going with you, they fall down, and it's not because of anything you did. So you have to have a thick skin when it comes to that the higher you go and whatever your goals are, that you are going to lose people. But the smart businesswoman is going to find those groups, like Tracy said, where you could collaborate. You always want to dump up. You never dump down. You never dump down to coworkers. You never dump down. You always have to dump up, and you could collaborate on some of the challenges that you have. Nibbles and bits. I've known Maggie for such a long time, and I called her the other day and I said, Megs, I'm hiring people. I said, what do you think? She goes, you got this. And none of my other friends could even say that to me because they don't have employees. And she's like, you got this. She goes, both of us are scrappy enough. She goes, nothing will fail. And I was like, you're absolutely right. And, I signed an office lease and we'll have an office. So again, find your group, know that you're going to level up and people are going to fall, and look for, that support system.
Very good. And what role do the company cultures and policies play in either reinforcing or dismantling some of these gender barriers?
It's so hard. I can say this from experience in writing a handbook, opening up the hotel. Everything is so hard because you can't necessarily hone in on certain things because they could be attributed to a certain race or a certain gender so it's very hard to come up with policies to avoid being treated unfairly because then they feel like you're nitpicking or doing something that's towards a certain race or gender. So it's very difficult, to be honest. And then it's very difficult to kind of figure out where you're going to be, and yeah, it's super hard to hold that. So you just have to be really vigilant. I think as a manager myself, watching the treatment of others, how people speak to each other, not what you say, how you say it, because there is microaggression and different things like that that we have to kind of be aware of. So I think it's just being hyper aware of what's going on in the teams around you, but it's difficult.
With Cosmoprof, I was just telling Tracy before everybody sat down, you know, it was an old boys club, and now they hired a female CEO, and she started cleaning house because the boys club were doing things that we were told not to do as sales reps. And, you know, you could see that shakeup. And I think people going for these roles, women's going for these roles, will definitely change that whole perception.
Okay. I think for me, it definitely has to start at the top. Every night, every morning, not every afternoon, it was at the newspaper, we would have this 4:00 planner meeting where we would decide what was going to be on the front page and, you know, where stories were going to go in the newspaper, and it was all the department heads. There was one day at this meeting when I came in, on the table was this ad proof for a female midget wrestling event that was happening at one of the hotels in the Scranton area. And there were two top-level editors sitting at the table, you know, commenting about this thing, passing it around, making jokes. I was the only female in the room. I wish, in hindsight, I had like just picked that thing up and threw it in the garbage, but I didn't say anything. And, you know, in a newsroom, it's a little bit different than in a lot of other industries. There's a lot of joking, there's a lot of off-color stuff. But this was really, like, aside from completely unprofessional, just really degrading toward women. And it just really points to the importance of speaking up, and that this has to start at the top. That this was an executive editor that was passing this thing around and joking about the women and the whole thing. That culture has to start at the top. And we have to speak up when we see it.
Right, and again, that leads into this question about what systematic or industry-wide changes are most urgent for achieving real gender equality. I'll say one thing that I'm like seeing happening in a lot more companies is paternity leave, because I think that kind of helps start leveling that field, like, oh, she's going to be on maternity. Now it doesn't matter because there's also paternity leave, and I think that's a great way to start level setting. I don't know what your thoughts are.
100%. I think there's two really big things. The first, like I said, the wage gap. I looked this up before, and I just want to share this with you because it's just so astounding to me. That, first of all, Pennsylvania is the 18th state in the nation that has the worst wage gap. So that means that women are earning significantly less than men. And in Pennsylvania, we're the 18th worst, okay? So in Pennsylvania, for every median pay, women earn $14,300 less a year. $14,300. Women earn about 82.4% of the wages that men earn. We have to close that gap. That's ridiculous. You know, and there's ways, you know, there's still a lot of companies that they look at salary histories. That's how they determine, you know, somebody's salary. We need to eliminate that. And again, like I said, you really need to know your self-worth and not be afraid to ask for raises. And then the second thing that is really important is that, you know, women are still predominantly caregivers. Companies need to order, they have to have flexibility. You know, women shouldn't be made to feel terrible because they took a sick day, or, you know, because they need to go take care of a child or run to a school. There needs to be that flexibility in schedules, and that it's okay, it's acceptable. And those are the two biggest things for me that will change this systemically.
Very good. Tracy?
I agree. The wage gap is huge. I've experienced it my entire life. I've definitely closed in on it a little bit more, but in the beginning, way underpaid and overworked, as most of us are. So I think that's a huge one. And it's very difficult now because as a manager, when I'm doing increases for team members that really deserve it, but somebody else didn't get it, and you don't want to tell them they can't talk about it because that's illegal. But then you sit there and you're like, but you want them to talk about it. But it's really difficult because I would love to sit down with other GMs and really just lay it out and be like, this is what I make. What do you make? Knowing full well that I'm probably undercompensated. Because that's definitely an issue and everything else. But I think that we also need to make sure if we're going to do, like you said, maternity leave, paternity leave. If we're flexible for moms, we need to be flexible for dads as well. I can be honest in saying that where my husband works, super flexible. If he needs to go pick up my daughter from the bus stop, he goes and picks her up from the bus stop. If he has to run down to the school to do something, he can do that. So there are companies out there that do have that feeling and are out there to help that. So I think that it needs to definitely be just more things that are available to women, and also opening that up to men so that it's, fair and equal across the board.
Okay.
My advice is to be yourself. Don't change who you are to do a job. Again, when I walk onto a construction site, I'm dressed like this. I'm not changing who I am. Don't change who you are. Go shoulder to shoulder, toe to toe. And again, I keep going back to, everything you could figure it out. When I, decided to go full-time into Allure Salon Group, the men that I was in the group with, like in my peers, they were all making more money than me. And I couldn't get past that because those guys got all the deals. So I made my own way. I was like, I'm going to make my own way, and I have. Most of those guys have retired right now. They're all on the golf course, still doing what they're doing, but I just made my own way. And now when I'm hiring people, and that was a big concern of mine, I have men and then I have women. And I think the one thing too is I want to know what people's goals are so that I could help them achieve their goals along with my goals. Because I guess when you are a leader, you have to look at the whole company and know what everybody's goals are so that everybody's achieving them all together. So, I have interns who do our marketing and, they want new cars. And I was like, okay, I know how many hours you have to work and I know how many accounts I have to bring in. And it's that kind of stuff. So again, I made my own way.
I want to add one other thing. I know I said two, but there's a third. It's important that women are brought or invited into the conversations, especially decision-making. And if you aren't, invite yourself. I can tell you, it always was astounding to me when that planning meeting that I talked about, in our newspaper circulation, it was something like, 58% were women, yet when you looked around that table making the decisions on what was going where in a newspaper, I was the only female. That's astounding when you think about who your readers are. Invite yourself, make your voice heard, don't be afraid to speak up.
Very good. And I know we touched on this. It was a question asked through the app, but it's actually, we've gotten a couple of votes since we've been here, so we're going to go back to it because it is a question I think that at any women's seminar I tend to run into it, is how do we promote women to be assertive and not have them viewed as bossy? So I think this is a great topic.
And I think that you hit it right on the head, being a leader versus being a boss or being bossy. I think that consistency plays a key role. So I hold you accountable the same as I hold this person accountable, and being fair and consistent across the board. So you're going to be called bossy, bitchy, all the things that you don't want to be called. But over your actions and over time, you'll be showing that you're consistent, you're fair, all of that. And then it turns into more of a just don't cross these lines. And you kind of lose that bossy tag or whatever you will. But I think that that's always been the key for me, because I do get a lot of people that talk behind my back or say things about me and all of that. And I'm just like, it's fine. They can do that because my actions are going to show that I wasn't playing favorites or I wasn't, picking on this person. This is why I did it. And if the next person did it, they're going to feel the same consequences of that. So that's my advice.
I think you do have to have that sound reasoning,
Yes.
right? And not be on a power trip. There are some people who are bossy, men and women, and it usually stems because they're on a power trip. You need to, especially in a leadership role and being assertive, know your stuff, right? Have sound reasoning for why you do things and be able to explain it if you need to.
Karen?
Just to follow up with what the lady said, be yourself. You have to be assertive. Not everybody's going to understand you. I think that's the biggest takeaway I get. And when you transition from a boss to a leadership role is, like the lady said, is totally different than being a boss. You know, I look at a boss as being a supervisor. A leader is, you're now growing your business and you have to be in the know with everything. So again, I think be assertive, dress for the part. Don't let people, intimidate you out of being who you are and how you, present yourself, and stay persistent.
All right, absolutely. So I know we're coming down close to the 5-minute mark here, but I'd like to open it up if there's any live questions from the audience that anybody'd like to ask. Yes.
All women have a difficult time asking for a raise.
Yeah.
And I just went through this with my daughter, which is interesting. And she did get her raise, exactly what she asked for, and we laughed.
Good.
Oh, shit. But we went through a process of how to do it, what we did, and so forth. But I'd like to hear your pieces of how to prepare yourself, what you did if you had to do it. What would you change about asking for a raise?
And this makes me angry because we shouldn't have to prepare to ask for a raise. And that bothers me that we have to do that, but it is so true that that's unfortunately where we are, because typically a male will walk in and just be like, hey, it's been a year. And they're like, oh, that's right, you have kids at home, you have a wife at home, let me give you 3% for cost of living. Where we have to kind of plead a case, which really annoys me. And that's how I ended up being like, well, I can't ask now because on my cons list is I called off a day. So preparing, though, when you go in and just being able to know your worth, know what you've brought to the table the last, 90 days you've been there, because some people take a job and they really wanted the position and they took the lowball offer because they really wanted the opportunity. So in 90 days, you really need to go back and say, okay, listen, you got a deal from me 90 days ago. So now we need to sit down and talk, and this is what I've done over the last 90 days. This is what I'm prepared to do for the next 90 days. And it's either you see my worth or we have a different conversation. And it's okay. This might not be the right fit for both of us. And I get that. You might not like my performance. I might not like your performance. Being able to not be afraid to walk away from a job. That's another thing, is that a lot of people feel like if they ask and then now they're going to look at me wrong or they're going to start picking on. Don't be afraid to be able to say, you know what, I can't do this position anymore, I can't work for you anymore, and I need to go find a place that does accept and promote my worth. So it's tough, though.
So in my whole career, I was always in control of my income. So if I needed more money, I knew I had to open up more doors. Or if I needed, our facilities to be full, we dug in. So, but I do have a daughter. She's 26 years old. She works for a top security software company. And she just had this problem. They wanted to move her out and into a new position, but she would have lost $70,000. And she knew enough to come back at these people and say, absolutely not am I losing this commission. I will take the role, but I will stay in both roles and work both roles for 3 months in order to get that. And they thought, they didn't think she was thinking. And so she got the new role, she got a raise, and then she got that commission for the business that she built. So again, I'm a little bit different because I've always worked for a commission. So if I needed more, I worked harder or I opened more doors. But you have to speak up and you have to know, just do the numbers, do the math, figure it out. Not by asking other people, but figure out where you're at. And like they said, don't be afraid to walk away. If doors aren't opening for you, they're meant to stay shut. And I'm a true believer of that. And I also believe in karma. So,
Yeah, and I'll just, I know we're up at time, the one thing I'll add, like, those conversations could be going on for months before it's time for a raise. Like, I try to meet with my boss on a weekly or monthly basis. If there was a position, even if I didn't feel ready for it or something, apply for it. Go through the steps of interviewing, because you're showing those bosses that you want to move forward and are looking for it, and it's great experience. So it's something I think you could kind of be building up to when it's raise time as well.
That's great advice, because that's how I identify future leaders in the organization. I will post a position, whoever applies for it. A lot of times we know like the next person that's kind of waiting for that is gonna be bumped in, but I like to see the line level that throws their hat in the ring. And then I'm like, ooh, that's somebody that I can start to work with. I can start to groom. I can give them delegate a little things to them and see how they do and start to groom them and grow them into the next role. So
And always make sure you get an interview. Like if you apply internally for a higher position, even if, like a lot of times, unfortunately, people are already kind of geared for that role, make sure that you get your interview so that you could have those conversations. You get the practice interviewing, because interviewing is terrifying for anyone, right? So absolutely, if you don't get the interview, raise it to your human resources department, to your leadership, and advocate for yourself. All right. And I think we're at time now, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you.